and simplicity, and ask you to hold that thought when I share the experiences of some of my constituents, the experience of people trying to help them, and even the experiences of DWP staff trying to navigate them through the universal credits. Inverness was a pilot for the rollout, meaning we are suffering the bitter effects and chaos of the full service rollout earlier than other areas. It is hurting people who need help the most, and I know that if honourable members across the chamber could see the grief that it causes at first hand, they would understand why I'm passionate about this. Mr Speaker, before I share some of the experiences of my constituents, I want to tell honourable members of my recent meeting with the Citizens Advice Bureau officers Leslie Newton and Elaine Donnelly. Respectively, they have 40 and 17 years of experience in dealing with some of the most challenging situations that we could imagine. Folk at the end of their tethers, and sometimes even at the end of their lives. They've seen it all and they've had to deal with it. Mr Speaker, when I met with them last week, they were moved to tears telling me about their universal credit caseload. They told me of the suffering they were witnessing. They told me this rollout is a shambles and that nobody in the system communicates with each other. Mr Speaker, they told me the process simply does not work. They see neither fairness nor simplicity. The transitional protection is limited and it will not protect new claimants. It also will be lost if the household undergoes changes in circumstances, and it doesn't protect people against the anguish and suffering that lengthy delays are causing people. Once again, the disabled are some of the hardest hit by the move to universal credit. The loss of the severe disability premium has taken nearly 62. I'm going to make some progress because other members, honourable members, wish to take part. The loss of the severe disability premium has taken nearly £62 per week out of the pockets of the most critically disabled. Cuts to the Disabled Child Edition mean 100,000 disabled children stand to lose up to £29 a week. Severe disability premium cuts mean disabled lone parents with young carers stand to lose £58 a week. Around £38 a week will be lost to those receiving work-related activity group of visa. Disabled people, I will give way just this once, very briefly.
I thank my friend for giving way. I wonder if he shares my concern at the lack of information and data that the DWP have on their own activities, particularly when it comes to the most vulnerable claimants. I asked on the 10th of January the Department to give me the number of people who had their benefits withdrawn or suspended in the process of transferring from DLA to PIP, and they wrote back on the 13th of January to say they did not know. Is that not quite shocking?
It is shocking. And once again, disabled people also have been found unfit for work by the Independent Work Capability Assessment are still expected to take steps towards finding work. Now, this group includes those who have suffered serious injuries in the early stages of progressive conditions such as multiple sclerosis and those with learning difficulties. Disability unemployment is a long-standing unique issue. With the process of universal credit is creating more barriers for them in the workplace. Now, the Prime Minister has been talking about JAM, the so-called just about managing. Well, thanks to universal credit, for many families, their income is about to be toast. I suggest that the Prime Minister comes to Inverness and talks to my constituents about our shared society. Those families with children who will be up to £2,630 per year worse off, according to the Children's Society. To the lone parents and people with limited capability of work under the age of 25, losing £15 a week. To the young people and their families who will be pushed further into poverty because of reductions in standard allowances. The 4-year freeze on support for children will see the value of key children's benefits cut by 12% by the end of the decade. Universal credit will not only fail to lift children out of poverty, it will push them further into poverty. Citizens' Advice have said that universal credit is failing to live up to its promise. From the outset, people have experienced problems, delays to claims and errors to payments. The Public Accounts Committee found that the systems were underdeveloped and said that there was increasing pressure on DWP staff. My team and I see it every day, day in and day out. Only yesterday, a constituent, Laura Shepherd, got in touch at the end of her tether. Her 20-year-old son, Douglas, has severe autism, and he's been on the waiting list for a work capability assessment since the end of September. During this time, they've had no disability support, just the minimum level of universal credit at over £200 a month. Quite understandably, the family are trying to get this sorted out, get their claim backdated to cover a period when they were incorrectly given child tax credits instead of universal credit. The universal credit team can't even give her dates for a disability work assessment for her son, as disability assessments of that nature are done by an external contractor. They actually told her, in writing, to contact me as her MP because they were at a loss of what to do. The wife of an officer serving in our army has now been waiting 5 months for assistance with childcare costs. 5 months with no payments, suffering a catalogue of errors and very sporadic communication. She couldn't get her problems sorted out because even the DWP staff on universal credit are not allowed to talk to the service centre or claims manager. Everything has to be duplicated by email, leading to confusion and lost information. And also, this so-called helpline. Who on earth thought it was a great idea to make this a premium call line? It's shameful that people with no money are being made to spend their last pennies on premium lines. What do they do if they've no credit in their mobile phones? That's if it's not had to be pawned to make up for the money they're not getting through waiting for their payments. Many constituents have come to my office to call the helpline because they have no money. And when they do, they're left on hold while DWP staff try to sort out errors for more than 20 minutes. Now, we asked CAB to monitor calls, and they found that none were under the government's stated waiting time of 3 minutes 27 seconds. In fact, all 36 they logged were for longer than that. The longest, a staggering 54 minutes and 17 seconds. Sometimes they're offered a call back, and if they're lucky and they get to their phone in time, if it happens at all, they will get it. But that's if they get it. They only get that one shot at that. It's like a universal credit version of Catch-22. The transfer of universal credit to full digital has already been halted, and the halfway house that has emerged is ripe for confusion. People are required to make online claims some of the time, yet need to take the original copy of letters to the job centre at their own cost. A report detailing the impact of the new scheme in Glasgow shows that not only claimants are struggling, but the controversial scheme is putting services and jobs at risk also. There's a lack of understanding and explanation as to the general requirements for a claim, and those who have special needs are often left to struggle and face the sanctions that follow. Where is the fairness? Where is the simplicity? The system is manufacturing debt and despondency. In Highland, the Council has a framework agreement for the temporary homeless accommodation services. It's £25 a night or £175 a week. One of my constituents, Gavin, has been living in homeless accommodation. On the old system, he would have been awarded a £168 housing benefit, leaving him a small difference of £7 a week to pay out of his other entitlements. Under universal credit, he has the same housing costs, but now gets £60 a week, meaning he has to pay £115 a week out of his other allowances. Only he doesn't get £115 a week. Even if he gave up food, heat, light and everything else and spent every single penny, he would still be short. Of course, Gavin and others will always be in arrears. The system is flawed by design. The initial arrears are from very briefly.
I think, does he not agree with me that the latest rise in UK inflation will hit poorest families hardest? And surely the government should be doing much to counteract its effects, given it's a direct result of the fall in sterling following the Brexit strategy.
Absolutely agree. There's more to come. It's not just the homeless. I have cases of families in private rented accommodation who have been waiting 3 months for universal credit claims. No fairness there, and the only simplicity is it's simply nuts. It is the Highland Council that's left carrying the debt for the money Gavin and others simply don't have. Already the Council has accrued an additional debt of over £180,000 as a direct result of universal credit. According to a report by Glasgow Council, a total of 73 homeless people in Glasgow are now on the benefit and have racked up £144,000 in arrears between them. The National Federation of Arms Length Management Organisation and the Association for Retained Council Housing which represent more than 1 million council homes in England, found the percentage of council home tenants in receipt of universal credits who are in rent arrears had increased by 7 percentage points, up to 86% in March last year. This compares with 39% of tenants in arrears who don't receive universal credit. The average arrears total is now increased from £321 to £616. Now, the SNP Scottish Government has consistently done everything it can to mitigate the worst impacts of Tory welfare cuts. And new devolved powers over social security and employment support will include disability benefits, carer allowance and winter fuel allowance. With these limited new powers, we'll seek to build a Scottish social security system with dignity and respect at its heart. But it's wrong that the Scottish Government, I'm going to finish up, but it's wrong that the Scottish Government and the Council should foot the bill of UK Government health cuts. It's also true that the proposal to cut 50% of job centres in Glasgow is a bad idea, a subject I know my colleagues will speak about shortly. Let's not forget, these proposals come in the back of last year's announcement to close 137 HMRC offices across the UK, with potentially thousands of job losses in Scotland. I'll finish with these comments, Mr Speaker. There is a damning litany of failure, confusion, heartache, indignity and a crushing drive towards increased poverty in the universal credit system. Long delays to payment, short payments, lost sick notes, misplaced documents, failure to respond, confusion between departments, crushed morale for the poor Job Centre Plus staff and an inability to respond to common sense are rife. It's time to halt this tragic experiment, the bad IDS idea, and think about how we provide for those who need our help, rather than those few who stand to profit from austerity.
The question is as on the order paper.